meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. When a new business is established, it is quite common for members of the same family to be involved in the enterprise. Family businesses are often a focus point that brings a family closer together. It can also be a bone of contention amongst family members, eventually tearing the business and family apart. Both scenarios are abundant in early automotive history, and today we'll take a look at two brothers that started a car business, argued about the company direction, and then parted ways. And as a result, a fine, upscale American luxury touring car was born, the Stevens-Duryea. Charles and Frank Duryea partnered up to make cars. Charles would design the car and Frank would test and race it. They had a rough start with Frank doing most of the mule work, but were up and running by 1895. The following year had produced and sold a bit over a dozen cars, making Duryea the largest car maker in America, a title they held for not even a year. Frank and Charles were often at odds. Charles was the chief designer, but his designs were not keeping up with the trends in the car market that Frank had his eye on for sales. Frank was also a decent engineer in his own right, and was often making his own design changes to the cars to make them perform and sell better. The fundamental difference of opinion between them was this. Roads in the USA between towns didn't really exist at this time in the USA. Charles wanted to continue to make the high-wheeler cars that had the clearance and ruggedness to travel between American towns. Frank wanted to make cars suitable for roads, town and city cars built for comfort. Frank correctly believed that roads would be built over time and the market for high-wheelers would eventually dwindle to an end. Things came to a thunderhead in July of 1898. A few months prior, they were contacted by an investment group located in Detroit. Detroit was a growing hotspot in the early American auto industry, and these money guys wanted a piece of the action. They approached the brothers with an offer. Uproot and come to Detroit, set up a factory there, and start making cars. Both the high-wheelers they were already making and some new models to compete with the city cars. Charles refused the offer, not wanting to leave Massachusetts and definitely not making city cars. Finally, Frank had enough and the partnership was dissolved, leaving bad blood between them that would never fully heal. While Charles continued to make his Duryea cars, with the buggy yacht being his crown achievement in his lineup, see episode number 8 for more info, Frank began to design his own cars and, since the Detroit deal fell through, looked for local opportunities. For the next 2 years, he got involved with a number of partners to make cars, and even one motorboat, until in 1900, he and his associates found a company that would sponsor the project. That company, located in Chicopee, Massachusetts, which is just north of Springfield, was the J. Stevens Arms and Tool Company. These guys were a big company, one of the leading makers of small arms in the U.S. and a major manufacturer of various hand tools for craftsmen. They had just expanded, purchasing other companies and their factories, so they had some room to spare. And so, after some haggling and a contract later, the Stevens-Duryea Company opened for business in 1901. The first product was the car that Frank had been working on and had already built a few of them. Using a 6-horsepower horizontal twin engine of Frank's design, it was the peer of the typical various light runabouts available on the American market and in the same price range. Often referred to as a Stanhope car, as it, like the carriage, had a single seat up high and a footable top. Some 60 were sold that year. The following year, they ramped up both their production line and marketing and sold close to 500 cars. In 1904, the model was given some upgrades and retitled the Model L. Still a runabout, the engine was beefed up to 7 horses, and the transmission went from 2 forward gears and 1 reverse to 3 forward and reverse. The Model L also used lighter wire wheels instead of the wood wheels of previous cars. These sold well in the US and also in England, the Brits remembering the 1896 London to Brighton rally and how the Duryea finished first, so the name still rang a bell. 1905 was pivotal in the history of Stevens-Duryea. One of the disadvantages of the runabout type of car was its very high center of gravity. The engine was under the driver's seat, making these cars about as tall as they were long and thus unstable in turns. The more advanced cars of Europe had front-mounted engines, were lower to the ground, more powerful, and much faster. Frank saw this and the state of the U.S. auto industry and decided it was time to stop making runabouts. Their time would soon end, and instead make powerful luxury and touring cars. Early in 1905, the Model R hit the showroom floor. A straightforward 20-horsepower engine, 3-speed tranny, shaft drive, and well-appointed. Overstuffed leather, comfortable suspension. It sold for $2,500 and did sell. They were by this time plenty of people with money in the market for a quality luxury touring car, and the Model R was a success. Yet later that year, a new car came into the offing, the Model S. This car, again designed by Frank, was quite innovative. A massive 9.6-liter straight-six engine of 50 ponies, yet with a twist. Frank worked out a multi-plate clutch system that was small and thin enough to allow the engine, clutch, and transmission to be all one piece, allowing it to be attached to the chassis with only 3 mounting points, 2 up front and 1 in the back. This allowed for ease of removal for repair and also made for a smoother, more balanced ride. This feature would endure on all Stevens-Duryea cars through to 1915. About every year or so, the company would upgrade their offerings and announce new models. Frank left the company in 1909 due to health reasons, and Stevens Arms shut it down in 1915, citing market instability due to the European War and lack of cash flow. Some former employees of the company did attempt to revive the brand after the war, several times actually, but such efforts were done by 1927. And so is the story of a brothers' quarrel that resulted in a truly great pre-World War I American luxury touring car. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we will see you next week. Peace.